Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmer, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of statewide-news-service.com and jbiztechphilly.com.
Okay, close enough.
All right.
Okay, Rabbi.
Statewide News Service.
Well, we have a very special guest with us, returning guest,
right.
one of my favorite assemblymen, David Weprin, and from Queens, Holliswood, and welcome to the Jewish View. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mark. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
It's good to see you
How
again.
many years has it been? We've been
That
a
I've been
long
in the
time
Assembly?
together. Yeah.
Well, I've been in the Assembly 5 years, but I was in the New York City Council for 8 years, and I went to college up here, graduated in 1977 from SUNY Albany when I was very involved with Rabbi Yisrael Rubin at the Chabad House, which started during my tenure as a student at SUNY Albany.
Mm-hmm.
And I served in Governor Mario Cuomo's administration, Olav Shalom. A great loss to our state and country, his passing just a month or so ago. And I served in his administration from 1983 to 1987, so I spent a lot of time up in the Albany area during those years.
Well, have you been to our new kosher restaurant? Did you know
I
we
have
had
not.
it?
I'm embarrassed to say I haven't. I definitely plan on getting there this session, but
Well,
we haven't been up to here that much, and I haven't had a chance to go yet.
Well, I'll have to take you and introduce you and show you around.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
It's a very good restaurant. It's vegetarian, vegan, under the Vada Kashrut, and it's Kol of Yisrael, and it's a lot of an Indian twist to the food. You know.
Oh, great.
So it's.
Well, I have a very large Indian population in my assembly district.
That's right.
So
So
that's
there you
also-
go, Indian kosher. There you go. I was wondering if you, what your thoughts are about this education investment tax credit, this EITC. I presume, based on what I heard this afternoon, that you were in favor of this?
Yes, I'm a co-sponsor of the bill. I am in favor of it. I think I know a lot of people think the opposition is coming strongly from the UFT, but I don't think it's
And New York State United Teachers.
and New York State United Teachers, which is part of the the teachers union.
Right.
But I don't think they should fear it the way they have. I mean, I support my public schools very strongly. I think it's very important that we have a sound public education and we have the resources. But this is basically just being able to contribute to various schools and get a tax credit. The original tax credit was 100%. I think the revised version that's proposed in the budget is 75%. You'd get a 75% tax deduction, tax credit, which is better than a deduction because it's actually dollar for dollar, 75 cents on the dollar. So I think it'll benefit yeshivas, but I think it also potentially could benefit certain public schools as well. I mean, there's no reason why people can't make contributions to their favorite public school and get
Right.
that
Now,
tax credit.
And this isn't as bizarre as naming rights, like you wouldn't have the David Weprin public school or something. It's not something that if you contributed $1 million that it would come to that. Because you wouldn't have that much of a tax. There's a cap to the tax that
Correct.
credit. Yeah.
What would be the chances of it passing now? I mean, it's kind of ongoing. I mean, every year.
Well,
that
the
they bring it in.
proposal now, and it's much discussion in my Democratic conference because philosophically we don't like the idea, we being legislators and certainly the Democrats in the Assembly don't like the idea of the governor putting in a lot of what should be legislative proposals that should be discussed and debated, not specifically this one, but there are many other policy issues that are part of the budget, and they're really not budget related, so there's a question whether they should even be considered in this process. Having said that, probably the best chance it has to pass is probably if it is part of the budget, because people generally vote for the budget as a whole. But
and what do you think of the coupling it with the DREAM Act, which has to deal with illegal immigrants? But I was just wondering, you support both, I think.
I do. I support the DREAM Act.
Because you have such a diverse population in your district. It would be political suicide if you
Well, no, I have
didn't.
very, I have a very, well, I think it's the right thing to do anyway, but I have a very diverse, my Queens County in general has over 200 countries of origin,
Right.
immigrants from 200 different countries and languages and dialects. My district is very diverse. I have a large South Asian population. I have a large Latino population. I have an Asian population.
Right.
So it's very diverse. People from India, from Bangladesh, from
Turkey.
China, from Korea, and from many Latino countries.
So here you are. You can support both, so you probably don't mind the coupling because you're supportive of both. But what do you
In
think?
this case, that is true.
Well, what do you think of just the idea of coupling? Is it strong arming? Because the Senate Republicans wouldn't support the DREAM Act, but they support EITC. The Democrats in the past in the Assembly haven't supported EITC, but they support the DREAM Act. I mean, is this a good way to? This is how. Pardon me for saying this sausage is made, but have you, do you like these types of things when they?
Well, generally, in a pure world,
Yeah.
it's better to have it separated, to have it as part of the legislative process and have hearings and have debate the issues on the merits. But as a practicality, I mean, Congress has been attaching,
That's-
amendments to different appropriation bills for years, and that's very often what happened in Congress is you'd attach something to another bill, and that's the way to get it passed. So we'll see. In this particular case, I don't
just
have a problem because I do support
Right,
both of them.
but just because it's done in Congress and it may be bad politics or bad policy in Congress doesn't mean we should copy bad policy. So I'm just wondering if that's something that maybe each of them should stand on their own.
I think the problem is that the DREAM Act has been around for a number of years, and it hasn't passed in the Senate. The education tax credit has been around a number of years, hasn't passed in our House. So this, might be the way to get both of them passed as part of a compromise.
Or both just fail and don't come to any conclusion.
Well,
And some
if it-
people have speculated that was one of the scenarios the governor came up with.
Well, the DREAM Act has been, passed in our House
Yes.
and actually had a vote in the Senate and failed in the Senate. So it has been out there.
Oh, yes, so, okay, maybe it won't, maybe by coupling them, maybe both of them will fail.
Well, not if it's part of the budget. Generally, you vote for the budget as a whole.
I
So
see.
if it's part of the budget, that's a way to, to get them both passed as part of the overall budget.
And you were on the chair of the Finance Committee in the City
I
Council.
was, and
So-
now I'm on the Ways and Means Committee
Right.
in the Assembly.
And being such a new legislator compared to others, I mean, that's pretty impressive that you're on the Ways and Means Committee.
Well, it's the first year I got on
Yeah.
the Ways and Means, so
Pretty
I'm here
impressive.
5 years. Yeah, I'm one of the more junior members. It's
Mhm.
mostly senior members in the
And
House.
that's probably because of your experience as chair of finance in New York City Council.
That was my argument why I should be appointed. Yes.
So what do you think of the new speaker, Carl Heastie? Do you think he'll be good for the Jewish community?
I do. He has very strong ties to the Jewish community in the Bronx, where he's the Bronx Democratic chair.
No, or about to be former, because he said he would give it up.
No, but where he was. He's done a number of JCR trips to Israel that I know of. He's told me about them, and I think he'll be fine with the Jewish community. I think he has strong ties in the Bronx, and
He does, okay.
I think he knows the Jewish community. He knows obviously he's going to have an education in a lot of different communities, being elevated to speaker and for the first time being involved in that position. But I served with him for 5 years in the Assembly. I worked with him when I was in the City Council, and he was up here in Albany, and we did a number of things together.
And
He's a
you
good
like-
listener, which is a very
well,
important quality.
We hear he's quiet.
He's quiet, but then again, so is Shelley Silver, and so is my father in their own ways. They were good listeners also. So I think he'll follow the Shelley Silver
Mhm.
tradition of listening and advocating for his members.
Now, you mentioned your father, Saul Weprin. He was Speaker of the Assembly
Before Shelley Silver.
before Shelley, and in between Mel Miller and Shelley. He
Correct.
was right. Did you ever think of, in this mix-up that was going on, and everyone was campaigning, did you have any glimmer of thoughts that maybe I could do this, have another Weprin as Speaker?
We have 106 Democrats in the House, and I think each one of them thinks that they could be a good speaker. I think, but I think you have to look at the realistic aspects of it. And I was probably a little too junior. I mean, Carl was actually the most junior of all the candidates that threw their names out, but he had still been here 15 years. I've only been here 5 years, so
Well, but you got the name.
I do have the name. Yes.
So there was, and Did you ever have a conversation with your wife about it? And,
No, but there were a number of
and people say
people have come over to me. A lot of constituents, a lot of people in the political arena have said something, to me. But
I never asked you this, so that's
Yeah.
why I thought I'd
No,
have some fun with you.
it
with
wasn't in
this,
the
that's
cards
all.
for this time. I supported Carl, and I think he'll be a good speaker.
Okay. What about there's a, yeah, you're the chair of the task force on people with disabilities.
Correct.
Why did you choose that, or did you not have a choice? So you just put on that? Did you request to be put on that?
No, I was happy. I discussed it with the former speaker, Sheldon Silver, where I got appointed, and we had a couple of different options, and I've worked with people with disabilities for many years, going back to when I was finance chair of the city council. I was very involved in programmatic money for people with disabilities. I started the autism initiative in the city council, where I got money every year in the budget, which was continuous for after-school programs and summer programs for children on the autism spectrum. I worked very closely with UJA at the time in that, and they kind of spearheaded some of that, and obviously there was a lot of involvement by OHEL and a number of other Jewish groups who were involved in the autism community, and we helped get them funding for various programs. So it's an area that I've been involved in for many years, and it's an area that I feel I can really make a difference with a very vulnerable population.
Are you working with Phil Goldfeder because he's the chair of the subcommittee on autism retention? And
Yeah, we've actually done a lot together on autism. Absolutely.
Yeah. So he says that he's going to try to have an autism, not just a disability awareness day, but an autism awareness day, something specific for autism this session.
Yeah, and I
is
think
this
we're
the
going
first you're hearing about
No,
it?
no,
or-
we had a meeting on it at the New York Family for Autistic Children. This was sometime last year, and we've been working closely on arranging that. So we're going to be working
Okay.
on it together.
All right, good. And did you want to be on this task force for any personal reasons at all, or anything, or?
No, my daughter has been very involved in working with people in the disability community, in the Jewish community. She's worked at Yachad for a number of years. She's been a counselor, working in summer camps and doing Shabbatons for many years with Yachad. And she graduated Queens College, and she's thinking of applying to either medical school or physician assistant school. And she's working at Yachad as a fellow for a year right now, working with special needs children in the Orthodox community.
How much has ethics reform come up in conference, and what's been going on with that? And do you feel the governor should be subject to whatever ethics reforms he might want to have for the legislature?
Well, yeah, I think it should apply to all state officials. I don't think it's just the governor. I think it should be all, statewide elected officials.
Statewide elected, okay.
Well, all state.
Not
well,
commissioners.
Well, we do have ethics rules in place. I think it's a question of, looking at them and seeing whether they're sufficient. But yeah, there definitely should be ethics rules applying to commissioners and senior level, administration staffers, as well as members of the legislature.
So do you support do you have any outside income?
I do.
And
I'm an investment banker. I've been an investment banker for about 30 years.
Would this impact your?
Well, I think right now we're talking about disclosure. If we were going to make the legislature full-time, I think there'd have to be a salary increase. I think there'd also have to be a change in the legislative calendar. Right now you have a legislative calendar from January to June, and the idea is that, we're a people's legislature and you should be able to have other occupations, other professions. I think there's a lot the legislature benefits from people of different professions. We have a number of pharmacists. We have one
Healthcare professional.
We have a number of healthcare professionals, including
John McDonald is a pharmacist.
We have quite a few, and we have farmers,
Right.
and we have people in the collection business. We have a lot of lawyers. We have a couple of doctors. So we
And
do.
you got a federal prosecutor now.
And we have a
Former federal
prosecutor. So,
Todd Kaminsky, yeah.
So absolutely. So I think there's a benefit, to the legislature that they can
Okay.
bring from their personal experiences. But when I first started in the city council, and also before I started in the assembly, I got an ethics opinion from the Ethics Commission at the state level and the New York City Conflicts of Interest Board, basically giving me guidelines, strict guidelines about where I can do business, and I don't do any bond issues or any financial business with any New York State agencies. I'm very careful about that. I do a lot of work in New Jersey and Connecticut and Pennsylvania and other places. As long as you have disclosure, you avoid any potential conflicts of interest. Right now we're still considered a part-time legislature. If we were going to make it a full-time legislature, obviously, I would go along with that.
Well, would you be, you said that, when you're an investment banker, you might have, you're trying to avoid conflicts of interest, but something might come up when you already have a client that you've had for decades, but all of a sudden has business before the state that, unbeknownst to you, or you couldn't possibly know what was going to happen in the future, you shouldn't be penalized for that.
No, as long as you have full disclosure, and I have abstained on a number of bills where I thought there might be an issue. So it's not uncommon to abstain, if just to avoid the appearance of conflict of interest, even if it isn't a direct conflict, it could be a potential conflict, and I have abstained on a number of pieces of legislation for that reason.
Well, that's good.
Both in committee and on the floor.
They should hold you up as an example of what to do. Because I have a list here of 43 legislative bad apples who got into trouble since for the past few decades. So
really,
yeah. So I'll give
the
you
Assembly and the Senate.
Yes. What are there? 28 in the Assembly and 19 in the Senate.
Well, do you think that would maybe relieve the problem? Because if they'd be full-time, I mean, there's no excuse for doing something wrong, of course. But if you'd say, hey, here's a normal full-time salary, you don't have to look for outside interests or bribes or whatever have you. I mean, maybe that would alleviate the problem.
Well, look, there's always the argument that there's something to be said that somebody doesn't necessarily rely only on their legislative salary to support their family, because then you might make certain decisions because you're worried about potentially losing an election. As opposed, because you need that income, to support your family, and you might do something you might not otherwise do because you're worried about preserving that job, as opposed to having a profession, a career that you could fall back on. So I could make that argument as well. And if you're going to do something illegal, you could do something illegal, whether it's a full-time job or a part-time job. Either way.
Mm-hmm. That's what the governor said. But now, they brought up at a news conference. They said, Governor, what about your book disclosure? And he says, well, wait, he disclosed what he had to up to this point. He says, wait till next year and hang around next year and you'll see what the rest of it is. And they said, well, is that the way you really want to act and to have that, well, he just didn't see it as a problem. And he said, the publisher HarperCollins is owned by News Corp. And someone from the audience said, well, why don't you, News Corp was lobbying the legislature and your office and the executive chamber for certain things, online tax relief or something. And he said, well, I didn't know about that. I have no idea who came or what. And, I don't know. It's like Sergeant Schultz, so.
Not exactly.
So I'm just saying, that's the governor. Until he knows, he doesn't know.
Right.
He doesn't know what he does. So anyway, what's your what's going on in the legislature coming up this year that you see is going to be a high, aside from after the budget, aside from ethics, aside from education, what do you see is going to be, or is it going to be a dull session? That we had all our excitement.
Well, you already had a lot of excitement that wasn't necessarily contemplated. Oh, look, the budget is an important part of the process, and there's still a number of issues to be resolved with the budget, and we're hoping we'll have a budget by April 1st. But there are other issues, outside the budget, and the DREAM Act is one. There's a number of other issues, and we'll be taking them up. I have my own pet bill that I've been involved in. I don't know if I discussed it last time.
No,
we call it the Adoptee Bill of Rights. We actually now have 90 out of 150 sponsors, bipartisan support, which would basically allow an adult adoptee, when they become 18 years of age, to apply for a copy of their original birth certificate, which is maintained at the local health department in the local counties in New York State. And that is actually sealed by law, I think since 1938, sealed at the health department. And I think part of the reason behind it was to protect often the birth mother, who often gave up a child as a teenager for adoption at a wedlock, and you're protecting that identity. But today, I don't know if that's necessary anymore, because we have the internet, we have private investigators, and adoptees who have assets, who have money, can hire private detectives and find out, who their birth parents are. And I think in states that have adopted similar legislation to allow adoptees access to the original birth certificate.
Well, for health reasons. I mean,
a lot of health
there might be
reasons.
hereditary
Right,
issues.
and we had somebody at a press conference I had who basically said she hired a private investigator. She found out who her birth parents, and she found out she was Jewish, that her mother was Jewish.
Really?
And she had no idea. She grew up Irish, and Irish Catholic, and she had no clue that she had any Jewish heritage at all. And she actually found that out because of the private investigator. But that's something that would be evident on the birth certificate, as well as there was another woman. She's been public about it, so I'll mention her name, a Jewish woman, Jill Auerbach, from Poughkeepsie, New York. And she gave up a child for adoption when she was 17. And she later found out, and she actually later remarried the father of the child. And then she found out that the father died of a heart attack when he was when he was about 40, and his grandfather, his father and grandfather had also died of a massive heart attack when they were in their 40s. And her son that she gave birth to, biological son, was approaching the age of 40, so she made it a crusade to find him, to get him the medical knowledge of his family history, which he would have no reason to believe as a healthy 40-year-old, that he had this genetic tendency for heart problems. And she did locate him, and she may have actually saved his life. But this is information that could be obtained through finding a birth certificate. Plus, their adoptees feel that it's part of their DNA, that's part of their life. And why should they have less civil rights than any other citizen in New York State, just because they happen to be adopted through no fault of their own? They had no control over that. And we're only talking about adults now. We're not talking about protecting children. We have a lot of legislation on the books to protect children, but here we're talking about adults that are making a conscious decision to apply and obtain their original birth certificate.
If there's 90 co-sponsors, why isn't it passed now?
Oh, that's another question. That's part of the things we're discussing with the
Is it the Senate?
Who's opposing it? The health
Yeah, I know.
department?
well, no,
Governor's office?
there's some legislative staff. There are a number of the Surrogate Judges Association have opposed it because they feel it takes away discretion from the judiciary from making that decision. Because right now, under the law, you can't apply, case by case to get your birth certificate for medical reasons. But the anecdotal evidence has been that very few judges will grant access to the original birth certificate. And I think it's an archaic law that doesn't necessarily exist. And people, there's a huge movement, and there's been a number of movies that have been out, basically showing how important it is for,
Well, Jewish identity, I actually had,
People
a
find
few
out.
cases, but one case was very, very frustrating. It was right up your line. And a person came to me and he said, all he knew was he's adopted, but his parents were Jewish. So I went to head rabbis. I'm a rabbi, but this is a big call to decide someone's Jewish or not. And they said, well, we need more evidence than just someone saying they're Jewish on who are their parents. So he went to court and they denied him. And I says, I can't do anything about it. I can't make you Jewish unless, the criteria is in. So it was very frustrating, obviously, for him, to say the least. And for me, I wanted to help him. But, your bill would help the situation there.
Right, and he might have trouble being married, by an Orthodox rabbi for that reason. And
Yeah.
Has anyone brought up the idea in this day and age when there's so much mental illness that if someone found out who their biological parents were, that they would be so upset with their parents for doing this, that they'd go after them to try to, sort of take revenge or something.
Yeah, I think you're talking about a crazy case,
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but that could happen.
Mental
That could
illness.
happen with or without whether some adult had access to the original birth certificate. Look, there are always going to be cases. The other argument against it was that you're afraid that when somebody becomes 18, they'll show up in the doorstep of their biological parents who don't want to have any contact. But my bill actually provides for a form and to contact the birth parents and have them opt to be contacted directly, indirectly, or through an intermediary, or have no contact at all as part of the request for the original birth certificate. And in states that have adopted similar legislation, anecdotally, overwhelmingly, birth parents have opted for contact with their biological children.
So when you said this was a pet legislation and you're talking about adoption, I thought you were talking about pet adoption. I thought you were gonna, because there's something, there's Pet Advocacy Day, and there's a lot of legislators who have their
That's
pooches
true.
they come with.
There's adult adoptee advocacy.
So I thought, well, we're gonna get something.
And they look at it as a human rights
Yeah.
issue, as I do, that why should anybody not have access to something that is a public document, but really the only one who really has any emotional interest to that document is the actual adoptee themselves, and they're the only ones that don't have access to that document.
Are you a lawyer by profession?
I am.
Oh, you are. So that's why, so the Judiciary Committee and Codes Committee really get your juices flowing, huh?
That juice is flowing. It's I have some a legal background to kind of add value in those committees.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that there was a connection there. And then banking, because you said you're investment bankers.
And I was also a deputy superintendent of banking under Governor Cuomo.
That's right. So you have that, and then the cities.
Mario Cuomo.
Right. Then the cities committee.
Correct.
So because you live in the largest city in the world. No.
Well, it's a committee that deals with. We had a hearing today. When the mayor testified, Mayor
Yes.
De Blasio.
Yes.
The joint budget hearing. I'm on Ways and Means, but I'm also on cities, and that was
I
a
saw
joint
you
hearing.
I can
Right.
testify to that.
Right.
Election law. Do you have a special penchant for election law? I mean,
Other than the fact that I've run for office a number of times, I ran for city council.
because we have one of the most
3 times.
arcane election laws in the country.
Why do you say?
Well, because when you circulate petitions, for example, there's certain restrictions, and if you just do something a little bit wrong, it could be challenged, and then it could be thrown out. I mean, I've seen such, crazy cases where people had the right intention, but yet the judge ruled that there weren't enough
Invalid.
signatures, and-
Well, we have made it easier over the years, to get on the ballot. We've reduced the number of signatures. There are a number of states where you can just kind of declare your candidacy and get on the ballot.
Yeah,
You don't have to go through such a rigorous procedure as New York State does.
right.
We've also had proposals for, voting over a number of days, making it easier
Yeah.
to register to vote. There are a lot of,
Well,
I think
I
we're heading in the direction.
I remember Governor Mario Cuomo saying, why do we only have election day on one day? Why can't we have a mobile voting booth that drives around the state and comes to your block, and you can vote, come out of your house and vote, and then go back in, and make it easier for the people, bring the voting booth to the people. And he was like, why if it snows in the North Country on election day and no one comes out, that they should be deprived of a vote, voting.
Yeah, we definitely should make it easier. And also, it's abysmal that we have such a low percentage of registered voters actually coming out to vote,
Right.
whether it be at the New York City level, the state level, or the federal level.
Right.
I mean, that we as a country have a much lower percentage of registered voters and registered voters actually voting than many, many other countries.
I think
can't-
they're having with
I
the
can't-
government, though.
I can't imagine that you've ever missed a vote, an election.
I can't remember any vote I've missed.
Okay.
All right.
Since
Listen,
I'm 18.
David, you're doing a great job, and keep up the good work, and
Thank you,
have a
Rabbi.
good session, and do it with good health.
Yes, much
Thank you.
success. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mark.